Hopefully you can see the screen. There's a PowerPoint. It should say Facebook's up there. You may or may not be able to see my face, but first, for those of you that were here last month, I want to apologize for that whole show. We had some technical issues, but we powered through, and uh, so let's just pretend like that one didn't exist. Maybe we'll do it again someday. But I do know that several of you took advantage of doing the e-health check. That's on our website. Please feel free to do that and call if you have questions. We just feel like that's a good tool for you to assess your own agency's needs and where you're at. And that's just a free tool that's available to you. Hopefully, it will provide some utility to you and some interest. That is the goal. So let's get started here. Um, Talking about the things. Uh, I always try to do the same thing. One of the reasons that we started this in the first place, back during the dark ages of the pandemic, was to just connect with people and to provide evidence custodians, evidence technicians, a place to train and to learn a few things and to think about a few things. That's why we also created the community forum on Facebook. That's a great resource. I think we've got probably 900 evidence custodians and evidence technicians across the country that are registered and participate to some level on that forum. It's a great place to get questions answered. Um, I am horrible at social media, but I check it from time to time, and I see people asking questions and getting answers to questions for things that stump them. That's a necessary resource and a great place to connect. So please take advantage of that if you're on Facebook. Join the community forum. We do pay attention and vet people that ask to join the site and limit it to people that can answer a few questions the right way. So, uh, you know, take advantage of that as a resource. The second thing I try to do every show is give a plug to Tracker Products. They are an evidence management software company, and they keep my lights on. So I appreciate that. We've got a partnership. We work together in several different ways. But if you want to learn more about Tracker Products and what they do and how they might be able to impact your agency with technology, visit them at trackerproducts.com. So they would be happy to talk to you as well about evidence management systems and software and all the things that that can do to improve your operations. So I'm having difficulty with my mouse here. That's our website, evidencemanagement.com. You can find a lot of resources there. Some of the resources I will tell you we keep behind kind of I don't think the right word is firewall, but we do keep it behind a client wall so that we just don't have all that stuff out there in the public. Because some things you just want to keep to yourselves, or at least you want to know who has access to it. So that's our website. Check us out. We'd love to see you there. We're going to do two shows today, two mini shows, two rants. We're going to have a little meditation on accreditation. And I've been to a couple of agencies here recently, and their accreditation processes, either national accreditation like CALIA or a state accreditation. And there's a theme that I've experienced, whether it's a state or a national accreditation, that's a potential hazard for us as evidence custodians. And I just want to talk about it for a little bit. Um, it's probably not a true rant because I don't, that's just not the way I roll. But it is a concern and it is something that we need to address and something that we probably need to have out in the just have a conversation about it, just talk about it, discuss it, because it can be an issue and it can be detrimental to you and the work that you do as an evidence custodian. Um, so we'll talk about it, and we're also going to talk about labels because that just is one of the things that just keeps bothering me. Oh, and I should have just forwarded the slide here. We'll do some announcements. We'll talk about some upcoming training classes, and then like you see we just said, meditations on accreditations and the sticky or unsticky subject of label materials. And then we'll talk a little bit about what we'll do next month. So thanks for being here. If you're just tuning in, you haven't missed anything except where everybody's from, and everybody's from a lot of different places. So thank you for that. I do want to hit our training classes, our remaining training classes for 2022. We've got training coming up next week. We'll be in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. So if you're in the Midwest, come see us or register for that class. Um, we've had a lot of fun and a lot of success with our training classes this year. We're going to try to have our 2023 schedule in place prior to the end of the year. Ideally, we would love to announce that maybe at our December episode. But these training classes are 2-day certification classes, and there's no charge to the participant or the agency. Now, we do need to make a little edit on our website because there's still a tiny little reference to the tuition cost. And when you hear free and then you see $350, that's confusing. So I at least for every class have 2 or 3 calls. Hey, is it really free? It's really free. Well, let me correct. It's really no cost to you. The agency and the participant will not pay to attend the class. The materials, we provide everything for you. We even provide a certification process and a certification if you choose to participate in that. We would love to have you be there at one of our 5 remaining classes. We've got a cool advanced class in California as well. So the next 2 weeks we'll be in Cincinnati and in Coronado Island, California, down by San Diego. Would love to see you there. Would welcome you to attend. There probably are still spots available. I'm not sure. These have been very well attended, and we've been very happy with what we've been able to do this year. We think it's really cool, and hopefully the people that have attended the classes would think something similar. But if not, you're not out anything. So no, I think it actually would be a great thing. We're also going to be partnering with the Oregon Association of Property and Evidence Officers, OAPEO. I couldn't remember the little acronym there, but we're partnering with OAPEO to do a class in Eugene, Oregon this year, and that'll be in September. And then we'll be down in Atlanta the middle part of September, into September, the 21st, 22nd. That'll wrap up the year this year. But we're already starting to try to, we want to go to different, I'm just all over the place this morning or this afternoon. We really hit the West Coast hard this year and last year. I think a lot of our classes were on the West Coast. I will tell you why. There's 2 reasons. One, because James, my partner, my buddy, is well connected in California and loves talking to people. Um, Me, not so much. 2, the weather in California is amazing. I don't know if you know that, but in Texas right now, I mean, it's not gonna hit 100 here today, but the weather here is like hell. So I try to spend any opportunity I can getting out of Texas. But we definitely want to reach a broader swath of the country next year. So we're gonna do some stuff in the middle. We're gonna do stuff on the coast. I really want to do 2 classes in Florida next year, and I would love to do. We'll still head out to California because they're just big states and there's a need. We've had an excellent response to the training out there. Um, if you have a region or you are at a place where you would like to see training come to you at no cost to you or the agency, uh, shoot us a line. We'd love to hit Florida. We would love to hit the East Coast. We would love to hit places in the middle. I will tell you kind of the way we're choosing training venues. We're trying to get to regions where there are a lot of there's a short travel distance for a lot of different agencies. We realize that training budgets are tight and overnight travel might not be possible. So as much as we possibly can, we're trying to find training locations near regions that have a lot of agencies around them. So again, 2023, we're working on that. Would love to start talking to you about that. If you would like to see us out there, but sign up for the ones that we've got this year. There's still time, and we think it'll be well worth your while. Before we move on from that, I think it's important also to state if you're in a tropical location for some reason, um, that is our first priority. We would love to have training classes in uh, tropical regions. I got Colorado. We're working with Colorado. It's not Cape, but we're working with the state association in Colorado. We tried to get out there this year. We are talking with them, and we would love to come to Colorado um, for a million reasons. It would probably be in the summer because the best time to train in Colorado is when the trout are biting. So we would try to do that, but we definitely want to come to Colorado. So thank you, and that's definitely on the map as well. So I'm going to click and ask this question. Let's start. I got one question for you, and you can either answer the question here in that little question box, or it can be more of a rhetorical question. But the question that I have is this, and I already know the answer, so this is really a cheating way to ask a question. But is it possible for an accredited law enforcement agency to be an absolute dumpster fire? I think here it is written as utter catastrophe when it comes to evidence management. That's the question. And unfortunately, one thing that I found, and it can it doesn't have to be a dumpster fire, but it is entirely possible for that to be the case. To have a national accreditation or a state accreditation and be an absolute catastrophe. Now, how is that possible? Because accreditation is supposed to fix all that. Well, let's take a look at what accreditation is and does, and how it can benefit us and how it can hurt us as evidence custodians, because it is possible. I've been to a couple of places where this is the case. It's got an accreditation, but it is still a mess. So how does that happen? So when we talk about agency accreditation, we're really talking about two different types. There's a national accreditation, and I have nothing against any of these entities or organizations at all, but these are the types. There are national accrediting bodies like CALIA. There might be others. I know our agency was CALIA accredited for a while before I retired. And actually, we stopped doing CALIA and we moved to a state model of accreditation. The Texas police chiefs have an accrediting uh, process for law enforcement agencies here in Texas. And I know in Colorado there's a state accreditation process as well. So those are basically the types. It can be a national thing or a state thing. And there are a lot of positive aspects of accreditation. I mean, accreditation has done a lot for law enforcement. So please don't hear me say accreditation is bad. Accreditation is not bad, but accreditation is good at what it does. It is not good at what it doesn't do. And that's what we want to talk about and address today. So they have multiple positive impacts. One of them is they increase the level of professionalism within the industry. I truly believe that accreditation processes are in part responsible for raising the level of professionalism within law enforcement. And the reason for that is pretty simple. There is zero standardization in law enforcement in this country. None. Zero. The way things are done in Lower Cletusville is going to be different than the way things are done at the county. I mean, you're going to have two agencies side by side, or an agency within a county, and the way that they conduct their business, the way that they do things is completely different, not just from an agency on the other side of the country. I'm talking about your next door neighbor agency. There's zero standardization within the industry. Law enforcement is different in the fact that there is zero standardization. And I will tell you a secret. I'm no fan of firefighters because everyone loves firefighters. And I love them too because they're always there to help you. But you know something about fire service? A firefighter from town A can help town B fight a fire because they all pretty much do the same thing the same way. And there is standardization. They can work together. They can cooperate. They're better at working together and cooperating than we are. And part of that is because they have standards and practices that they follow that are just the way they do business. So that's a little bit of a soapbox. So where accreditation succeeds, we got to look at accreditation for what it is. It is a broad spectrum review, a broad spectrum, a full scope review, and most of it is helpful, you know. But when you go a full spectrum, when you've got a broad spectrum accreditation process, when you're looking at the big picture, the 30,000-foot view, um, you're not going to really have much insight or specific insight into specific areas within each agency. A broad spectrum is going to yield a 30,000-foot view. And most of what accreditation processes review are written directives. Do you have a written directive that says this? Well, yeah, okay, we do. But the problem with that measuring success is when do doesn't match directive, when what we do doesn't match what we say we do. In the trade, we call that technically a lie. And it's not really a lie of intention, but when our practices fail to meet our procedures and our policies, that's the net result. It looks at pieces of the puzzle, but it never looks at how those pieces work together. And it doesn't look very deeply at any of those particular pieces. So again, not complaining, but accreditation basically is examining and reviewing the building plans and the building materials. But there is a difference between building materials and an actual building. And unfortunately, we place a lot of uh, significance on the accreditation process because it is significant and it is important. But there's a very big difference between building materials, the pieces of the puzzle that accreditation looks at, and the actual house. You got to live in that house. You can't live in a house that's just building materials. They have to be put together in a certain way, and they have to flow and function and work together in a way that is very different than just the characteristics of the materials themselves. Hopefully that makes sense. But if it doesn't, it's kind of okay because this is a rant, and maybe it's not supposed to make a whole lot of sense. Um, so let's look at where accreditations can fail. Um, Really, you start with the quality of the inspector and the inspection, the assessment tool. There are various accreditation tools. In CALIA, it's Chapter 84, and actually, I like Chapter 84. I got no issues with the bulk of Chapter 84 in CALIA's accrediting standards and best practices. I haven't read it in a while, but it's not a bad document. It's just not a complete document. And that's okay because CLIA is looking at a huge swath and spectrum of law enforcement practices and pieces. So they're not going to hit everything. It's just not going to happen. Um, but when you look at other like state associations, there are a couple of state associations when I'm reading through their practices and standards, there's a whole lot of talk about a directive needs to say this, but there's not a lot more than that written into it. And some of them actually contain language that's kind of flawed and doesn't necessarily promote the absolute best practices and standards within evidence management, specifically those sections that are talking about property and evidence. So there's the quality of the assessment tool that can be an issue. Some are better than others. There's the quality of the assessor. Who's coming through? If this is just a rubber stamp process, then this is not very helpful at all. But one of the things where accreditations can fail, and when I say fail, I'm talking about fail us as evidence custodians, is generally they lack the assessors and the assessment tool lacks a deep insight or much expertise into what we do as evidence custodians and evidence folks. Um, so because there's a lack of insight or experience in both the assessor and the assessment, sometimes that doesn't yield the best, uh, the best review or reflection of an agency's practices related to evidence management. But for me, the biggest flaw, the fatal flaw of an accreditation process, and this is not the fault of accreditation organizations, this is the fault of people that use these insights incorrectly. It's false confidence in that stamp of approval. Well, that couldn't be true because we're an accredited agency. If that phrase is ever used, then that should be a red flag. Couldn't happen because we're an accredited agency. Or no, we're an accredited agency. We wouldn't do that. Well, that's not true. Accreditation processes can breed a false sense of confidence for law enforcement and executives. And I get why that happens, because if I were a police chief, I would be nervous all the time, especially now that I've worked in evidence and done evidence consulting and training for a number of years. I would be nervous about running a dope unit, use of force issues. I'd be nervous about how my evidence is stored, managed, and handled, because I am responsible for that. So I want to feel good about myself. I want to go to bed at night. I want to sleep without worrying. So one of the things that you can do is place your confidence in the wrong place. Accreditation is a wrong place. Just having that seal of approval doesn't mean that everything is okay. It's incumbent on us as law enforcement not to allow that to happen. So that is a rant on accreditation, and I promised you two. So now let's talk about labels. And labels just continue to drive me nuts, because everywhere I go, I usually see two or three things specifically related to labels that are just vexing. Um, so we're going to have another little rant about that, because, you know, that's what we do. But the failure points, labels fail us in four different places generally. And I want to give you, by the end of this, I'm going to give you fixes for all of these things. But basically, labels fail. The four failure points are: one, materials, the label material that you use; two, the adhesive that label um, has stuck to the back of it; the type of label printer and ribbon system that you use to print your labels on; but four are labelers. We can control pretty easily the material, the adhesive, and the printer on our side of the equation. Um, we can choose and advocate for appropriate label materials and adhesive that use the right adhesives and use the right type of printer. But labelers are another issue. The people that place the labels on the bags, that is another area where labels tend to fail. So let me try to illustrate this a little bit better. So when it comes to materials failure, where the actual label material itself fails, here are a few examples. This is a motorcycle stored outside in the elements. They did their level best to protect this label by placing it inside of a bag. But the crazy thing about the sun is it is incredibly powerful, and it basically obliterates printed materials using the wrong materials really, really quickly. The second picture there, and we're probably not pointing at the same thing, but the second picture there is a label that was just fell on the floor. This was a label that was attached to an item that just fell off the item. That's another example of a label failure. I've experienced number three here, where labels just slough off. Either they fall off of the location or they fall off of the actual package itself. Um, that's another type of just material failure. And the last is kind of similar to the first. It's a label that's just faded over time and is no longer legible because it was exposed to the sun. There are fixes, really easy fixes for all of those issues right there. And if you want a deeper dive into it, I went ahead and put up a handout, the evidence packaging guidelines that we did last year. Basically, this is minimum material specifications. We're not going to tell you what size or what kind of printer to buy, but we're going to tell you what type of materials that you need to be using to prevent issues like this. I have seen this for years and years and years, over and over and over and over, just repeated in training classes, in auditing projects or consulting projects. I see these types of failures all the time. I also see these types of failures. These are labeler failures, where you will have a detective go seize a computer and then fill out by hand a paper label And then instead of putting the case number on it, they put the serial number of the CPU on there. Now that's just a failure on the labeler to put any meaningful information there. That's easy enough to resolve. The other is like another labeling failure to me is just where you place the labels. If you've got like this was a bag, and there are a lot of issues here, but they're just placed everywhere, all over the package. That's a problem, especially when it comes to trying to inventory a package or trying to examine a package. You don't know which of those labels are in there, what it means, any of that stuff. And then my other favorite are people that love to just close craft bags by crinkling them. Those labels are label failures because it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to use a barcode reader to scan those packages because labels don't really read well unless they are flat. Now, you might be able to get a scan, but this is the same thing as going to a grocery store and you're trying to get a UPC barcode reader to read a package that's just all flipped over. They've put the UPC barcode label in a weird place. It's just not going to work. So, how do we overcome this? This is actually pretty simple. We won't spend too terribly much more time, but if you do have questions about any of these things, please place them in the question window. But the solution here is very simple. Um, Use the right materials, use the right adhesive, use the right type of printer with the right type of ribbon. That will resolve all labeling failure issues except number 5. If you use paper for your labels, they will fail. Now, you might be able to keep them for a limited time in a storage environment if you got perfect conditions, and I'm going to use examples here. This is a paper label, and it is a 4.5 by 3. This worked better when I was thinking about it. But this is an evidence label. Oh, now this is an evidence label. Now this looks like a great label. It's 4 inches by 3 inches. It's got a lot of real estate here, but the problem is the material. It's even got permanent adhesive, which is awesome because I can't get this stuff off of half the things I've stuck it to. But it's a paper label. And if you can do this to a label, it's probably not going to last very long. Paper is not a great material to use for label construction. It's just not. Paper rips. Paper is made of wood. It soaks up moisture. It doesn't hold print very well, even though I get it, books and stuff. But that's a totally different thing. Paper is not a great surface for printing labels on. Polypropylene or synthetic labels are the materials that they use to label oil field pipe. And I've never worked in an oil field, and I don't think I'd last long in that environment because I've gotten used to my desk. But oil fields are really rough places, and oil fields are really rough conditions. They use polypropylene labels to label oil field pipe. So that gives you an idea of just how durable that product or that material is as a surface for labels. Are they more expensive? Yes. But when it comes to labeling property and labeling evidence, it is far worse to have a label just utterly fail and evaporate, to disappear overnight, than it is to spend a cent or two more on a better material that's permanent. One of the principles of labeling evidence is that that label should be there for the duration of the custody of that item, regardless of how it's stored. Now, we know that some evidence is going to go into cold storage. Some of it might be stored outside. Hopefully not. Some of it is going to be stored in a protected, temperature controlled environment. But regardless of where it may be stored, that label has to work for all of those. Synthetic polypropylene labels are definitely the answer. Now I'm going to do another little test here. This is and the same goes for warning labels. If your warning labels don't follow the same standards as your evidence labels, then they're going to fail too. And you're going to find yourself digging into a box or a bag and getting ready to destroy everything. And then you reach inside and you realize, oh, that's disgusting. It's bioevidence. It's covered in blood, but the little sticker fell off. Let me show you. This is a biohazard label right there. And the material that this biohazard label is printed on is polypropylene. And I can't rip it. It will not rip in my fingers. Now I could cut it with a pair of scissors. I can tear it with, whoop, whoop. I can destroy this label somehow, but because of the material that is used, polypropylene, it's durable. It's going to stick around and it's not going to fall off. And it's not going to fall off the package because it has permanent adhesive. So I'm going to find a place for this. So that polypropylene label material is really important. The second thing, adhesive, it has to be a permanent adhesive. Labels now, the adhesives now are really advanced, really incredible products. They can make adhesives that will hold a label on a container that you can remove with no residue left behind. That's beautiful, but that's not the stuff that we need. We need stuff that's never going to let go of that package, regardless of the packaging type. It needs to stick to craft paper, to envelopes, to cardboard boxes, to plastic heat sealed tubing. Um, it's got to stick to everything. So for that, we need a permanent adhesive. Last couple pieces of the puzzle, the type of printer that you use. Direct thermal printers are not appropriate for evidence labels. They just aren't. You need to use a thermal transfer printer. Now I've got one here. I don't think you can see it. It's not plugged in. Oops. I don't know how helpful this is, but that's a printer. And this is a thermal transfer printer. And the reason I know it's a thermal transfer printer, it's got a little ribbon in it. Yeah, this visual aid is not very helpful because you can't see any of that stuff. So I'm going to put that down because that's just making it awkward. Thermal transfer printers with wax resin ribbons, that is the equation for permanent labels that will not fail you. If you do not use these four materials in your labels are probably going to fail you. So, trying to find my mouse. That's nice. There we go. So, any questions? Those are the ends of my two rants. I've got a barcode printer in my lap. I'm gonna put that down. You can see the top of my bald head. I'm going to look in the question window. Take a minute if you haven't already and download that little evidence packaging set of guidelines there. Well, there we go. It looks like none. It's been perfectly explained. All right. Well, that is it for this week. A couple things. We will be training. We're going to be in Cincinnati next week, San Diego the week after that, and in Eugene, Oregon, and Atlanta in September. We're putting together our 2023 schedule. Please reach out if you have ideas or you would like us to come to your region. Again, we would love to hit the middle of the country and both the coasts and all parts in between. We're open to pretty much anywhere where there are people that need evidence training. We would like to bring that training to you, and we would like to provide that to you at no cost to you or your agency. So our next show, September 29th at 2 o'clock Central. It's different if you're in a different part of the country. And our last three episodes here in season 3, October 13th, November 17th, and December 15th. Thank you for being here. If you have questions, reach out to either myself or to James. We'd love to be able to help you. Hopefully, we will see you at an evidence class, certification class near you in the near future. Have a great day. Thanks for playing. I'm going to hit the button here that makes everything go away. Have a great day.